Peace, peace, people. Welcome to your mindless world, the Jelly Moose's Cafe. I am your hostess, your Mima, and of course, it is always good to be black in the land of the living once again. I do not own the rights to this music. It is called Bayou Rhythms. It's by Bayou Rhythms, and it's called Happy, Relaxing Cajun Music. Again, I do not own the rights to it. We are still in Hoodoo Heritage Month. Once again, we still have a few days left. So I want to bring as much information and stories to you as possible. So let's get into it. Tonight's story comes from Michelle E. Lee book, Working the Roots, over 400 years of traditional African American healing. Again, if you have not gotten this book, I don't know why. What are you waiting for? It is available on Amazon. It is an amazing, amazing, amazing book. It is really, really good for those who may be just beginning their journey into hoodoo or root work. Um, Even for the seasoned ones, because you can definitely find some things in this book that you may not have been using for different healing. So it's very good. I suggest you go out and get it. All right. So tonight's story is going to be about one of our ancestors named Evelyn Elizabeth Preyo Bernard. And she says people were real cautious about not leaving their hair around. I think I may have mentioned in one of my episodes before, my mother used to burn her hair. Whenever she combed or brushed her hair, she would take her hair out of the comb, out of the brush, or whatever, and she would always burn it. I also do the same thing. All right, and then it says, don't raise your arms above your head when you're pregnant. 189 years of pregnancy wisdom. All right, so let's get into Evelyn's story. I was talking by telephone one day with my mama, my grandmother, Evelyn Preyo Bernard, while I was hanging a load of clothes on the line in the backyard. It was 1997, and I was 8 months pregnant. Mama knew something was happening, and she asked me, Michelle, what are you doing? Hanging up my clothes, I answered. You shouldn't be doing that, she told me. You're not supposed to lift your arms above your head. The cord could wrap around the baby's neck and it could choke to death. What a gruesome thought. Of course, I didn't believe her and asked for an explanation to justify how on earth raising my arms above my head when I'm pregnant could somehow cause the umbilical cord to choke and kill the baby. She said, just don't do it. Okay, I said, just to end the discussion and placate her. Mama knew. I had no intention of taking heed to her warning. 10 minutes later, the phone rang again. It was Mama. Before I had a chance to get the hello out, she frantically said, I just called Miss Ethel and I told her what you were doing, lifting your arms above your head, being pregnant and all. And she agreed with me. I don't care what you think, but you've been but we've been around a long time and you people do things differently today. We raised our kids right on our own ways, and everyone came out all right. You shouldn't be doing that. Miss Ethel was one of Mama's friends, and at almost 100, one of the few persons on earth who was older than her. The passion in Mama's words, her deep concern for her yet to be born great granddaughter's safety, and her plea for all of her 89 years of wisdom to be heard softened my stubbornness. This woman, graced with sound health, keen sight, and good hearing, still lived alone in Oakland, drove, walked unassisted, gambled, danced, went to Mass every Sunday, played cards until the wee hours of the morning, caught the bus downtown to shop, volunteered at the hospital, and cooked a mean pot of gumbo. This woman, in all of her wisdom, could be right. Finally conceded and said, Mama, if you and Miss Ethel say I shouldn't be doing that, I won't raise my arms above my head. I promise. And I honestly didn't think, and I honestly didn't for the rest of my pregnancy. My daughter, Nora Irene Elizabeth Dockery, was born perfect, with no cord wrapped around her neck. Evelyn Elizabeth Preo Bernard was born on May 19th, 1908, to Fortuna Elizabeth Russell Peugeot and Emile Preo. She was the second child of this union and the middle child born to Fortuna. Evelyn is my mama, my mamir, my grandmother. On May 19th, 2008, she had graced this earth for 100 years. It was only natural that my journey in search of the traditional healing knowledge of my ancestors began with her. Evelyn grew up in the midst of New Orleans Creole culture and attended Catholic schools all her life. She developed into a nice, respectable Creole Catholic woman who worked hard, never missed a mass, and married Creole in order to carry on that bloodline, and most importantly, to her and her community, the physical features Creole coveted: lighter than a paper bag skin tone, sharp features, and hair that didn't need pressing to be straight. Creoles are a combination of several widely diffused Old and New World cultures, African mixed with one or more of the Native American tribes of that region, and French and or Spanish, Portuguese, or Italian. On the outside, Fortuna, my great grandmother, appeared to be very much like how she raised her daughter, Evelyn. To my knowledge, my great grandmother was not a full voodoo practitioner, though she did things that would make the Catholic Church cringe and call her a heretic, a pagan, or possessed. Fortuna healed people in her community with roots and herbs and energy and other worldly powers. She believed in spirits on the other side and regularly attended seances with her children, Evelyn, Eugene, and Lillian. My grandmother has told me that Fortuna, who spoke the French patois of the Louisiana Creoles, sprinkled salt in the corners of her house so to ward off evil and created elaborate novena altars with burning candles and incense to make her prayers more powerful. Fortuna believed in and prayed to saints who concealed their African origin, much like people from Puerto Rico and Cuba did in the Santeria religion. For most of her life, Fortuna used traditional medicines to heal. Her daily way of life and her healing knowledge was an amalgamation of her African, Native American, and European roots, enveloped in Catholicism for purposes of survival. Where did these teachings and practices come from? I guess she learned them from her mother, my mama. My mama explained to me, and Fortuna's mother, Elizabeth Augustine, learned from her mother, Seraphine Timbo, and so on and so on. And so the oral tradition survived through the generations, and we can trace it all the way down the line from where it began, back across the Gulf of Mexico to the island of the Caribbean, and from there traversing the Atlantic present day Guinea in Africa, which is the origin of the surname Timbo, or Southern Africa, which is the origin of the surname Timbo. So they're spelled different. Fortuna crossed over at 94 years young. That year was 1980. I was 21, and I hadn't even begun to appreciate the knowledge she carried. Evelyn, my mama, had passionately embraced Catholicism in all of its tenets and practiced a little of what she saw her mother do. Evelyn passed her obedience to Catholicism down to her three children, my mother and my two aunts, who grew up oblivious to all Fortuna really embodied. Genetics say a person carries 14 generations of memory in their genes, and certain traits can skip a generation or two. It has been 2 generations since Fortuna's passing, and I have opened this door again to carry on the legacy of my great grandmother and my mother's people. Fortuna didn't carry the knowledge with her to her grave. It's stored in my genetic memory, and like her, I believe in communication with spirits from the other side and the power of root and herb medicines to heal. But my grandmother also carried the memories of her mother's work, and she shared many of the things with me that she remembered about her mother and the ways of the Creole folks. Marking your territory. On the first Friday, early in the morning, some people would get up and scrub their steps off with urine to ward off any devilment or evil or anybody who would try to hurt you. Miss Cooley, a great big heavy set lady who lived up the street from us, she used to do that. We used to scrub our steps down with red brick dust. We called it brickley powder. Everybody had nice red steps and all around the porch. It was protection. People didn't think you were crazy because people believed in voodoo. They believed you could be hurt by voodoo. So they just figured it was something that was being done for your own good. You weren't hurting anybody else. You were just doing it to protect yourself. Most of the voodoo things people did was just taking vent on people that they didn't like for petty things. If somebody came to your house and you didn't want them back anymore, when they leave, get the broom and sweep them out. Then take the broom and hang it up behind the door upside down, and they never come back. That's right, and throw some salt after them. I remember this family who lived near us kept on having bad things happen to them. They finally put their mattresses and leaned them against their fence in their yard and cut them open with a sharp knife. They found voodoo potions in their mattresses. You could see through the fence, so everyone knew what was going on. This kind of stuff happened a lot. You wouldn't know how the voodoo got there because there would be no cuts in the mattress to show how the voodoo got there. There was one family in our neighborhood that didn't like the family who lived next door to them. They wanted to get rid of them, so they put some kind of voodoo potion under the person's front steps to make the person get sick. And by some stroke of luck, the family found this under their step and destroyed it. And whatever voodoo this woman was trying to put on this family backfired, and it turned out on her. The family's name was Tume, and the man, Mr. Tume, got very sick and died. I was very young when this occurred. People were real cautious about not leaving their hair around. When you would cut your hair, you would burn it. Yeah, you didn't let your hair just get loose. They thought maybe somebody would do some harm with your hair, so that was a precaution. You didn't have any toilets to flush your hair down, so you had to burn it. I was quite old when we got sanitary toilets, but when we had what you called outhouses, that was all over the South. I've seen a lot of changes and a lot more to come with what's going on today. There was one woman in our neighborhood who really was involved in voodoo. Her name was Ann, Miss Ann. People used to go to her house so she could make voodoo packets for them. She made a living doing that. She could say she lived, you could say she lived in my neighborhood on Claiborne Street in New Orleans. My Louisiana family was part of the wave of Southern folks who migrated west and north in the late 1940s for better jobs and new lives. U.S. Steel, Del Monte, Lay's, Mother's Cookies, and the Naval Supply Center, the auto plants, and the U.S. Post Office needed reliable, stable workers to fill what seemed to be endless positions with union pay. While the war was still going on, the shipyards were hiring in Oakland and Richmond. There were good longshoreman jobs. The fresh and eager migrant Negroes who came out to Northern California from the South had no problem living in the tenement houses, boarding houses, or shacking up with family until they got on their feet. They survived and lived much like American new immigrants live today, except without all the social benefits that make transitional life easier, such as welfare, food stamps, and medical and other support services. But there were many benefits in those days for Southern African American migrants that are not always present today. Folks could fulfill their American dream, buy a home, a nice car, and send their kids to a decent school. People also invested their money into the communities where they lived. The local black owned mom and pop stores sponsored sports teams and contributed to local church and social organization fundraisers. And in turn, those mom and pop stores were happily patronized. It was a time of hope, opportunity, and progression. Evelyn didn't need to think twice about moving out west to California. where opportunities were plentiful and there were tales that the streets were paved in gold. Her husband of a few years, my grandfather, Ernest Bernard II, affectionately called Shine, didn't want to go and didn't want her to go. Evelyn left anyway for a visit with my grandfather's sister, Mildred Pinion, in 1944. A year later, she moved to Oakland, California for good with her two youngest girls, my mother Beverly and my aunt Joyce. My grandfather, Papa, eventually but reluctantly followed, grumbling. In New Orleans, Evelyn had a lucrative business as a hairdresser, and she used those same skills to survive in Oakland until she was told her Louisiana hairdresser's license would not be valid in California. Evelyn used this as an opportunity to get a stable government job at the Naval Supply Center in Oakland, where she worked for 30 years until she retired. My grandfather, Papa, worked as a train porter for Southern Pacific and was usually on the tracks. He gambled and drank his modest earnings away at Golden Gate Fields just north of Oakland, betting on horses and shooting craps with his pals at a nearby pool hall. He never contributed much to the household, though I remember one time on my 10th birthday, he just reached in his pocket and gave me $5. Eventually, my grandmother stopped expecting his help, though being Catholic, she refused to divorce him. We all were Catholic, even though my mother was excommunicated from the church for having married my father, a Mississippi Protestant. My grandmother's priest told her that her daughter Beverly was going to hell for such sacrilege. Mama told the priest in her most respectful tone that if her daughter was going to hell, then she'd see his mother and him there too. And that was that. We remain excommunicated Catholics to this day. Traditional remedies, spiced with Fortuna's wit. Visits with my grandmother usually meant eating. And eating in a Creole kitchen meant foods seasoned with a lot of garlic, dashes of cayenne, bay leaves, and loads of love. A pot of red beans and rice, chicken fricassee, spaghetti, potato salad, shrimp Creole, and if I timed it right, leftover gumbo. This is comfort food. This is good medicine. Grandma Evelyn explained to me during our interview, adding in many other healing practices she had learned from her mother and others and brought with her from Louisiana. Mama Fortuna used to slice regular beets and put them in a pan and put the pan outdoors overnight. The dew would fall on them, the moisture from the next day, and you would drink it to keep your blood up and keep you healthy. When you have ringworms, you put a penny in a vinegar solution until it turns green and you rub it on the ringworm until it disappears. As a child, Mama would take me with her to seances where you talk to spirits. She believed in that kind of stuff. She used to go around and heal different people in the neighborhood, give them baths, herbs, roots, poultice, whatever she could to heal you if you were sick. And they called on her. Sometimes she'd stay up all night long with them. There was one case with a little boy. He was a friend of my brother Eugene. He was sick and had a high fever, and Mama would go there and put hot compresses on him around the clock. As soon as one would get cool, she'd move it and put on another one. She rubbed him down with quinine castor oil mixture, and wrapped his body in castor leaves. Once the leaves got parched, she put a fresh set on him and made sure his body was still oiled good. She rubbed the oil all over his body like people give you a massage. She stayed all night. She got tired and she left when he started to get better and told the people to continue doing what she had been doing. But they didn't understand that it had to be a continuous thing, and evidently they didn't continue. They didn't continue this the next couple of days, and the little boy died. That was my brother's best friend. I remember he died. Maybe if Mama had the proper schooling, she would have been a nurse or a doctor. She liked dealing with people that were sick. It just come natural to her. If babies had an earache, Mama would take a cigarette, even though she didn't smoke, and she would blow the smoke into the child's ear. I guess the nicotine in the tobacco would ease the pain in the child's ear. She would do this to me whenever I had an earache. Then she would say, then she would syringe the ear with a little warm water. You took the temperature or you take the temperature or feel the baby's back and hands to tell if they got fevers. If you were hot, then mama would rub your body down in a mixture of quinine oil and castor oil and wrap your body in big leaves from the castor tree. You stay that way overnight. The next day, the leaves would be dry like they had been in an oven, parched from the fever, and the fever would be gone. I did this for my children too. We would also put flaxseed poultice on your head or chest if you had a fever or a headache. Mama would fill a tub with steaming hot water and put whole bay leaves in it. She'd make you sit in a chair next to the tub and cover your whole head with a towel. You'd inhale all of that steam, and everything and whatever was wrong with you would come out. I had three children, none with herniated navels. But when a baby's navel did protrude, as it sometimes did, you would use a dollar or half-dollar coin to cause it to be deflated instead of inflated. You tape the coin to the baby's navel. First, press the navel down a little bit and put the coin over the baby's navel so that it will push into the belly instead of pushing up and out of the belly. Then take the tape and tape the coin down. That's what you do so you can have a pretty navel and wear a bikini. You leave it on until the navel goes flat. Then you say that person will always have money. When I was pregnant, I took castor oil to induce labor, but you never take it if you don't want to induce labor because it will bring it on. It's good for constipation too. Everybody breastfeed their babies back then, and I breastfed all three of mine. When children were young and had stuffy noses or congestion, they could blow their nose and couldn't blow their nose yet. Mama would use her mouth to suck the mucus from the child's nose and spit it out because the baby would be so stuffy and couldn't breathe. Maybe they didn't have those suctions back then, but that's what Mama used to do. Mama had such beautiful skin. She used to wash her face and body with watermelon rind. People wash their babies with it too. It says interviewing my grandmother was a priceless experience. I'm fortunate to have begun talking with her when she was still of sound mind and memory. I learned a lot about her, the Creole culture, my ancestors, and those traditions of healing that have been passed down orally for generations. At the end of our conversation, her final words to me were, there is a book on Marie Laveau, who was our voodoo queen, and her remains are in the cemetery on Claiborne Street in New Orleans. A lot of times, tourists go by and look at her grave and pick up pieces of wood or anything that they think has a connection with her grave, just to take it for good luck. Her grave is still there in St. Louis Cemetery. The people who would be able to tell you a lot of things are long gone. I know that's too bad because a lot of it isn't recorded at all, which is really a shame. When you die, you take it with you. That's what they say about our traditions as an oral tradition. Now, you got all of that on tape? My grandmother matter of factly asked me as she let me know the session was over. Yes, Mama, I got it all on tape. Good. I want to play some of my records. I flipped through her album and called out the names and titles on the cover until she says, let's hear that one. While Nat King Cole croons tunes from the 1940s, my grandmother reminisces nights eating out and dancing to live music at Esther's Orbit Room in West Oakland on 7th Street, and the hub of Black entertainment during her day. I get great satisfaction just watching Evelyn conjure up memories from a past she can relate to. I've seen a lot of changes, she concludes, and there's a lot more to come from what's going on today. Mama crossed over at 104 years old in 2012. This was a good one. So many things that she talked about, what her grandmother, Mama, used to do. And it reminded me so many things of what my mom used to do. I remember them putting the coin over the baby's navel to flatten it out so that it didn't protrude. Um, yeah, and I remember when my sister was pregnant, um, my mother would tell her not to raise her arms above her head. And I remember also when the mother came home, the baby could go out, but My sister had to stay in the house for 2 weeks. She couldn't go anywhere. And so, yeah, that was another thing that I remember growing up. Oh, wow. Yeah, such great memories. Oh, my goodness. I promise you, if you get this book and you start to read these stories and you start to read some of the healing herbs and things and the way that they used to heal and the things that they used to use, it's going to come back to you. It may be something that your grandmother may have said that you don't remember right now, but when you read it, it's going, oh man, yeah, I remember grandma or papa used to do that. So, yeah, again, a very good book. I really suggest that you get it. That's tonight's episode. I hope you enjoyed it. The Bayou Hoodoo, or the Bayou Voodoo, I should say. And you know the drill. Until next time, love yourself, love each other, give yourself some grace, give others some grace. Honor your ancestors. I promise you, they will honor you. We are our ancestors. Stay healthy, stay cool, stay warm wherever you are. And until next time, stay black. Peace, fam.